Hello, Sequoia.
Hi, Austin.
So you are the very first recording of this series that has been this project I've been wanting to create for some time.
Mhm.
And it's been a slow cooker, which kind of makes sense speaking about this topics that we are. But
Yes.
the first episode is here, and so it happens that you're the first episode here. So yeah, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. I feel really excited to be here and chatting about this topic with you. Whenever I saw you post something about wanting to interview on grief, I was like, yeah, like grief is, I think, can be such a taboo topic, and I feel really passionate about making it less so, or I guess inviting others to explore other ways of looking at grief. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Mhm. I want to begin in kind of a meta level first of what do the chapters look like for you from growing up until recently? Have there been like different chapters of not knowing grief, not knowing what was happening, maybe as a teenager or young? Like, have there been some distinct chapters, and then there was like a distinction between a new chapter where there's like another level of competence or the learning spiral where you're like, oh, this is grief, and then now I'm like going to another level. What have you
Mm.
noticed about different chapters of your relationship with
Mm.
grief, growing up as a woman and growing up in this society? What's your journey been like there?
Yeah, great question. I would say starting out, my I've always been a very big feeling human, very expressive. And I would say around my teenage years, uh, I stopped emoting as much. And I didn't really like, I wasn't super conscious of it at the time, right? So there was
Mm-hmm.
like uh, this period of a lot of confusion around, I think, around what grief is and experiencing it. Um, the I guess the next stage after that would be almost like it's like the melting down point of when grief like reaches like a feel it or things will like continue to bring you back to this grief that's unaddressed. And uh, I would say there was a long period of grief of that point in my grief journey of kind of like melting away and not really being sure of what that was. And I would say that now, like about 2 years ago, was where I really faced all the grief. And, or I wouldn't say faced all of it. I was finally brave enough to open the door and know consciously, like, this is the grief door and we're going through it now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it became a very much like a dedication to know that part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am in this chapter where I am still getting to know the nuggets of wisdom and the truth that's in the grief, and just really getting cozy with like what those truths are and finding out how to like exploring how to embody those truths. Uh, and it's kind of been like this full circle journey that I keep coming back to with grief, which is that when we meet it, and we're curious about it, there is some pretty fucking potent magic there of like self-reclamation and love for myself and for all of us and for the earth. So
Mm.
I'm in this chapter of integrating and learning how to, I like to say, how to make love to my grief, in the most like in the most like tangible ways, showing up for all the little parts of myself that maybe I in the past have abandoned because of survival or certain pains that came up. And now I'm like finding all those pieces and we're on this journey together of loving myself. So,
Hmm. Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Take me, yeah, I'm really curious about this pre-grief, like the build up to the doorway, or like the recognition of the doorway, or like the reckoning, or whatever this
Mm-hmm.
transition would call that you mentioned, of like some things wanting to be felt, but like the person, like I or someone doesn't know how or know what's even happening, but it's like something's clearly like pulling into a reckoning or a facing. Yeah, tell me about that stage of how was that for you? Like, yeah, what was happening? How did you start to notice that something was going on?
Yeah. It was very somatic. Uh, there was just a very slow decline in being connected to my body and to my power. Uh, and so that came up with a lot of like exhaustion and
Mm-hmm.
overcommitting, overgiving, and feeling really numb, I would say was like probably the biggest indicator. And also, there's like this forgetfulness that happened with me of like forgetting what it felt like before I had felt numb, forgetting that this whole other aspect of myself like existed and was still there. Like she hadn't gone anywhere.
Mm.
But there was like this really heavy blanket around the knowledge of who I have been and who I am at the core. Um, so yeah, it's very somatic. And uh, my favorite author, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she talks about, oh no, I forgot what point I was going to make with her work. What were we just, can you bring me back to what we were just talking about? Um,
The forgetfulness, or like being in a maybe a bit of a denial about these parts of yourself.
yes, thank you. Uh, so in Women Who Run with the Wolves, she tells a story about um, the seal woman who essentially loses her, in the story it's called her seal skin, but it's Estes refers to as her soul skin. And when we aren't making time to commune like with our grief, we're losing access to like our soul essence. And she describes it as like it's a very visual and physical experience of like cracked skin or deflated deflated personality. And
Mm.
there's a lot of other descriptions that she gives, but it and it's a beautiful story that I would highly recommend anyone to check out. But uh, yeah, it's like this death in a way, like refusing to grieve is in and of itself like a slow death until you meet it.
Mm. Yeah, like refusing death knocking at the door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me, you mentioned the somatic aspect, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, will you double click or bring closer to, yeah, what are the physical cues that you began to like maybe sense like over and over, finally like, I'm getting that this is happening, and maybe this was like the clues for the next, the next stage. But what were the sensations and that you were noticing?
Yeah. The sensations were uh, feeling lethargic, feeling a just like a profound sense of like hopelessness and dread, um, very heavy in the body, and agitation about all the things.
Hmm.
um, which felt in the body, felt very like bubbly, like boiling water. Um, there was a period of time that I've been able to heal a lot in this, but there was a few years where most clothing sensations, like they were too activating for me because my body was like so agitated and needing to process this grief.
Mm. Wow. Were there any like physical symptoms, like physical like illness, or like it seems like a lot of people get these like Hashimoto's, or what do they call this class of like the immune system not working properly, and so they get these autoimmune type things. Seems to be
Yes,
like what I get about people that haven't met their grief so much yet is like, yeah, were you getting any
yeah,
kind of physical illness things?
definitely. I got really thin was like the first sign. Became really underweight and then started to experience symptoms that I later found out was Edler-Danlos syndrome, which like all of my joints were hurting, inflamed. That skin feeling that I was talking about, like it felt like my skin was on fire all the time. And
Mm.
I think what else? A lot of sleeplessness, autoimmune. I also So I wasn't officially diagnosed, but I was told that I likely had POTS, um, which just like getting dizzy all the time, standing up and would almost black out. Uh, yeah, I I feel a little removed from it because it really does seem so long ago because my body has recovered so profoundly
Hmm.
with meeting the grief. Uh,
Yay.
yeah, yeah. It's a wonderful thing to have some distance from, for sure.
Do you get any clues? Like, I guess anyone can make conclusions, but I'm wondering, with like reading the authors that you're reading and your own personal experience as well,
Mm-hmm.
and you being on your path of evolution and knowing other people on their evolutionary path, do you get what is it that shakes up this stage of where before you were thin, before the skin thing, before the
Mm-hmm.
severe heaviness, like where some like being on this path that all of a sudden something like shifts, and like because I get the sense like the grief has been there all along, but then it's
Yes.
like if something like busts the dam or starts to puncture the skin, or something like the iceberg starts to let go, or like, do you get any clues about, yeah, carrying all this grief, but then the body finally makes this like radical resistance stand, or like a throwing a
Yeah.
tantrum? What do you get about
Yeah.
this?
The best way I can describe it is like there was a part of me, and maybe, I like to think of it as that my soul kind of resurged. There was just this like resurgence of hope, that this hope of love and having a very acute knowing and clearing of what love is and choosing to go after it in whatever way that I could. And a lot of that was, for me, was taking up space, honoring my no, uh, and making a lot of intentional time to feel that love, like really allowing it to break me open and to feel it very deeply. So instead of like holding back and fearing the grief, there was this like adoration that developed for it and for the humanity of it that we all have.
Mm. And are you saying like that's what gave you hope with like to weather it, or is that where that's what triggered the big grief somatic storm?
Mm. Could you ask that one more time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering like what do you get like what is it that life seemingly is okay, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves with the somatic storm of illness and dis-ease and all of these things, where you have the skin and the heaviness and the frustration and all this. What is it that takes us from seemingly life is okay, we're on the linear path of life as, you know, American dream or normal life, whatever, to all of a sudden in this shitstorm of grief starting its initiation? Like how,
Mm.
if grief has been here, like if the underlying wounds have been all along, what is it that all of a sudden starts the dam to break?
Yeah. Are you asking, starts the dam to break to actually feel the grief?
No, like for the symptoms to start coming, like seemingly out of nowhere. Like what is it that starts to break the dam with the symptoms before we feel the grief later?
Mm. I see. I would still say that hope, like it's for me, it was like a very small inkling, right? And I didn't even perhaps know that that's what it was, but following a crumb of hope and following it to the next one and the next one of there being a different way to exist, reaching
Mm.
a point of dissatisfaction of like, this doesn't, this doesn't feel good. So let me follow these breadcrumbs of what is going on here. There was a curiosity born.
And so once you started taking those steps,
Mm-hmm.
shit started getting real from things that have been unconscious. And
Yeah.
is it kind of something like that?
Yes. Very much so.
Like it seemed to get worse before it gets better, some kind of metaphor like this.
Yes, definitely. Mm. I saw something earlier today that referred to grief as like actually feeling grief and like letting the tears come, the sobs come, that it's a power wash like for the body,
Mm.
for the insides. And if like in my case, I hadn't been power washing. Uh and so there was a lot of cleaning up to be had with
Mm.
tears. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about when you start when you started to be able to find the courage to actually contact the grief itself, like the sensation and the fear, the feelings of grief. Like maybe you had been through it enough times, and you're like, oh, I might actually lean towards it. Or what was there a shift at some point to like numbing and avoiding to facing into it? Like how did that go?
Mm, yes, there reached a point where, a lot of people think grief is just feeling sad. And what I found was my anger was really my initiation into making any sort of movement through that threshold of grief.
Mm.
And there was a moment in time with the most important relationships in my life where I reached a point where it was like, wait, no. It was a absolute refusal to continue on in the way that things had been. And that that rage or that anger of that sacred no that came online, it it allowed me to get shit done that needed to get done in order to make the changes in my life that were needing to be made. And then once that movement happened, I was able to get to a place where I could feel safe enough to let those healing waters come for
Mm.
for the sadness that was to follow. Um, yeah.
The rage being a doorway
Yeah.
into an early doorway into grief. Mm-hmm.
Yes. My favorite teacher, mentor, Leela Madeline, they talk about that rage is like the vehicle uh, to one's conviction of like what is right or wrong, or to one's truth. It is what provides movement to find one's truth. And I find that very poetic, but also just really helpful. I think there's a lot of resistance and taboo in the collective of touching our rage because we've been taught to fear it, programmed to fear it, and um, I would say it's our travel companion through the threshold of grief, and I don't think we can go through it without it.
Mm.
um, yeah. Might get stuck in just the sadness of it all if we don't call upon and list our and listen to our grief through rage.
Mm-hmm. What did you find helpful with your? Did you know at the time, like anger was like, oh, I think I found a key, or was that looking back? Because I'm wondering, like, what kind of practices or what were you doing to connect with your rage and give it some new space?
Mm, it began for me with dancing by myself in my room and feeling this sense of like aliveness that I hadn't felt in years.
Mm.
And um, will you bring me back to your question one more time so I can connect the dots?
Yeah, like what were you doing with? I think you were answering it with the dance of like, what was the anger stuff that you were doing? How are you discovering that your anger was this next key? Like, what practices? How are you expressing your anger?
Yes, yes. So dance allowed me to explore anger and rage with myself and with the divine, and it was in a way that I wasn't expelling it onto people, right? So it was this release and this connection that I could have um, with spirit that I wasn't destroying people along the way. There's a lot of there's a lot of evidence in our world of rage being projected out, but interacting the with dance and with my rage in that space with just me and the divine was I was able to love and appreciate the wisdom that rage held for me and hear her voice very clearly, uh, as opposed to mm, like getting distracted or even like what's the word? Hold on. Like inflated by it.
Mm-hmm. And with the dance, was it mostly through movement? Was it also sound, or was it actually like the stories or the things that are about other people? Like, were you saying that as well, or like, yeah, will you share a bit more what you use dance to discover the anger?
Yes. I So the setup I had was I had a like full length mirror so I could fully see myself and have my
Mm.
reflection reflected back to me when I was
Well,
um yeah, while I was practicing. And so it became this really potent, almost like a ceremony where I was getting to meet my rage, what it looked like, what it sounded like. So to your question, yes, there were sounds, there were growls, um, and at different points there were maybe where I was speaking and um, naming the rage, but a lot of it was just allowing myself to feel it without feeling inclined to act upon it, but just
mm-hmm,
allowing it to circulate instead of to
mm-hmm,
suppress it. And I picked songs very intentionally that the lyrics or the music were like very lively, very spirited, and the lyrics being about remaining in one's sovereignty and power and how no one can take that away. I think I listened to Beyonce's My Power like probably over 200 times, like
mm,
a couple years ago. It was my anthem of like no matter what happens, and being able to see myself in my mirror dancing dancing it into the floor, dancing it into my body, tapping this truth that no one could take away my power. And having those moments, like once my dance practice was concluded, it that person that was in the mirror, she always seemed to stand a little bit taller afterwards.
mm.
And I would say that my devotion to my dance practice is it's been a long journey, but I keep showing up for that person that I see in the mirror, remembering who she is and her embodiment, um, and having my rage as a resource to honor her and to protect her and to make choices that are dignified and honorable. Um, yeah, that's what I got.
I love those two words you bring there at the end: the dignity and the honor through rage, and observing, witnessing yourself. What what was it like to see yourself, like see this raging woman, this raging being there in the mirror? Was there something surprising at the beginning, or like to discover how angry you were?
Um, that came later as I allowed my rage to unfurl more. I would say
Mm-hmm.
initially there was just this like awe, this reverence, this like, oh, I had no idea that you were there. Like there was this love and adoration for the expression of rage. And not only did I not know that she was here, but it was like I didn't know she was that rage could be embodied that way in our collective. So it was this like falling in love with myself, but also falling in love that like if it was existing in me, then it exists in everyone. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
this like full circle moment that provided a lot of like excitement and hope. Like, wow, this is good stuff.
Mm, totally. It's like I've thought about it like discovering that we have rocket fuel inside of us and don't know where the fuck to point it. Well, yeah, unconsciously gets pointed a lot of directions and sideways
Right.
and stuff, but like discover, oh, I have this rocket fuel, and if I can consciously meet it and feel it, maybe I can start to choose what I create with this rocket
Yeah.
fuel or something.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I yeah, that resonates for sure. And I think is a really important like a very important ingredient for those on the path to enlisting their rage. Um, mm. I had some other thoughts to go with that, but they flew away.
Mhm. And you mentioned that this would give way to making changes in your life, creating the safety or the space that you wanted in your life, and then you would start to meet the sadness.
Hmm.
You bring me closer to what was it like to start to meet, yeah, meet the new levels of sadness.
Oh, I would say it was a lot more difficult to meet my sadness than my rage.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I I didn't realize how many stories I had carried about my sadness and what it meant. Rage was like somewhat empowering, and I could see right away like the benefits of like dialing it up to create movement. And with meeting my sadness, I had to just completely slow down and surrender. And there was so much unknown there that felt really uncomfortable to sit with. Um, I think the universe knew that this aspect was going to be more difficult for me because essentially, as soon as I got to a place that I could feel it, I got into a wreck with a semi truck that essentially made like forced me to physically slow down.
Mm.
And whenever I slowed down, the sadness had a lot of things that she wanted to tell me. And at first I didn't want to hear it. And I started picking up just some soft pastels and moving them around on a page. And that allowed space for me to hear what sadness had to say. And what I found was a lot of gentleness and love, which was very heartbreaking at the same time.
Mm.
Um, to discover like the depths of sadness are some of the most beautiful parts of love. It's where like what I discovered was where mm, the most purified parts of love that I could find for myself and for the other. They were found there in that slowing down and surrendering to the feeling.
Mhm. I'm curious about the pastels because
Mm.
you have some art behind you, and this is how I don't know you well, but one of the ways I know you and got the sense to yeah invite you to be on this series was getting to go to one of your in-home art presentations,
Mm-hmm.
something like this. And so yeah, will you say more about the pastels and how your dance was infused with the art and this with the sadness?
Yes. Well, at first, it was just literally me meeting myself on the pages in my journal. And I hadn't had no intention of like, I'm making art. It was just like, I'm grieving. I'm like purging out this sadness. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just a lot of moving different colors around and completely removing any expectation of myself to make something beautiful, to make it worthwhile in any way, to be able to sell it or produce it. And I'm an artist by trade. I have a bachelor's in art, and so it was a pretty big deconditioning of stepping up to the page and just removing all expectation. Um, so that's where it started. There wasn't a whole lot of dance at the beginning, and I produced about 47 pieces um, that I later realized was like an oracle deck because each piece had like a message that came through with it surrounding grief and surrounding coming back to one's heart in that grief. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, once I did those and kind of sat with those a little bit, um, sat with those messages and let them integrate, I started feeling mm, I started feeling more inspired to um, to explore the sadness and the rage together. Uh, a friend of mine um, recommended to get really big pieces of paper, and so that was an exciting idea for me. And uh, some of my past best work had been really large, and so I went for it and put on some music, and those same rules, the rules of there not being any rules, applied.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that as I was moving the pastels around on the page, that my body wanted to dance and wanted to story tell while I was um, moving the emotion through me and onto the page. Um, and there was always this like, at least in the beginning, and it still can happen. There's like this hesitation whenever I'm stepping up to the art of like, all right, like I don't know where we're gonna go. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's gonna be discovered here? And uh, what I found through the pastels is mm, how beautiful the and how beautiful and how nurturing embodying art is. Not to produce anything, but to just be in it. And specifically around this concept of grief and how, even though it doesn't feel good in the body, like our grief can always be mm, transmuted into something uh, worthwhile and that has messages for us.
Mhm. I resonate with the part where you shared about being an artist, but then like, how do I get past this thing where I'm not doing it for production or for showing anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
And I get that I'm actually still like, I'm a musician for my, I've been singing since my whole life, and I get that I'm actually kind of here in this place too, where like I've kind of like set aside my music, and when I pick it up, I'm not. There's something getting in the way of me, like learning to let the grief, anger,
Mm-hmm.
sadness, fear, denial, the whole journey, connect through my voice and through writing the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And something, yeah, touch or something. There's something there that I was curious about. Like, do you have any clues or tips of how to get set that aside so you can just be in it? I want
Yeah.
that, and I haven't
Mm-hmm.
discovered yet
Mm-hmm.
what works for me. So I'm
Mm.
curious.
Yeah, I love this question. I What first came to mind as soon as you started asking it was embrace the mess. So whatever that means
Mm,
to you, the bits in exploring your music, noticing like when there's a voice that comes up that's critiquing the messiness of it, of discovering, of creating. And like instead of being like, oh, I don't like this, I'm gonna lean this way, like instead like lean into it. And
mm,
always like a reassuring message that I would tell myself whenever I was leaning into the mess is um, I can always begin again.
mm.
And just living that mantra with the art of there's no pressure here, there is always time to begin again.
Mm. No pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Always time to begin again.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a very well, I've been told lately that I'm very theatrical, which is interesting because I never considered myself that way. But um, I would invite you to and others to like make ceremony of it in whatever way feels good to you. So,
Mm,
like for me, uh, different totems or different like pieces of jewelry or clothing, um, connecting with that and having it with you when you're creating as treating the process as sacred and as holy. That messiness is sacred and holy. Uh, was a way that I was able to get past the perfectionism of or the block of uh, yeah, blocking myself from the possibilities of what could be. Because then when
mm,
I, uh, you know, would have those blocks come up, say I'm creating, there was a piece and I was, so let me back up. There's a rule that I have of like, I can't, there's nothing there's nothing off limits. If I see something in my piece after I'm scribbling, you know, I'm going to carve it out and I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to be curious about it. And so having those totems or those pieces, like it reminded me that I was safe and that I would always have me and that this was an exploration and it's both sacred and holy and there's no pressure. Like I'm human, having a human experience, exploring my creativity through accepting the messy bits that go along with it.
mm.
And I found I found those pieces really anchoring when my inner critic would get really loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally just remembered one of the most passionate songs that I've ever wrote. It might be like the real last song I wrote maybe about a year ago was actually I'd had a ceremony with myself, a ritual at my altar and candle and prayer.
Mm,
And what came up is I started feeling, I was like, I was freaked out. It was high fear.
mm, mm,
And I don't like, and somehow I slipped into embracing it and staying in the fear. And then I just came and grabbed the guitar, and like the fear just like, or this experience of being in the fear, like came through one of the most passionate
mm.
song that clearly I was like, I grabbed something, like I finally gave space for the muse, or like, or let some, like grab something that wanted to come down, which
Right.
I, yeah, but like it blasted through me through like a little ceremony ritual space, being slow enough to feel and turn into it, and then
Mm,
letting something blast through me. And I don't have a practice yet of regularly being going to do that place and then letting the music come through. But I love that you said the ritual or ceremony part of it, because I do have that experience and letting something be created through me.
mm. I love that. That's beautiful.
This might be the last question for today, but where are you at like now? What's the cutting edge of knowing your heartbreak? Where are you at if we're all spiraling and learning in spiral ways? What's the, yeah, what's the cutting edge with knowing your heartbreak?
Mm. Whenever you asked that, the phrase came through right away of it's okay not to know, which is whenever I was working on this piece, that was the beginning of um, something that I was working through of reassuring myself that it's okay to be in the unknown. And I would say, like, it's a theme that I keep coming back to, right? I'm on this spiral. And, I came by that message whenever I was doing this piece, but then I'm integrating it even deeper now.
Mm,
In my heartbreak, there's a lot of unknowns. And there's also a lot of hope and a lot of love there. And what feels cutting edge for me is allowing all of those things to exist simultaneously without creating stories of what it means or holding on too tightly. Like, really, I'm exploring what it's like to feel heartbreak so intensely while also surrendering to, like, surrendering to what the river, like, let's say my tears are the river, like surrendering to like the channels that are being carved out, and
mm,
really
mhm,
finding gratitude for those natural pathways that form because of the grief, and trusting that those pathways um, are part of my journey of the unknown and not having to have it all figured out.
mm. I'm getting, yeah, chills because I have this same experience of like these trenches being dug out, like these furrows like being dug out for like, yeah, but for the water magic to do the next magical thing. I don't even know, but I
Yeah.
love that. I got chills, yeah, hearing you say like how it's digging out or carving out. Maybe use the specific word
Yes.
in the
Yes.
heartbreak.
Yeah. An old friend of mine would always remind me to like choose the path of the least resistance, like in certain circumstances. That I wouldn't say that that's like something that I always adhere to. But I would say with grief, when the waters of or the rivers of grief are flowing, to really be curious about where they lead,
Mm,
and following, because a river carves out the path of the least resistance, whenever it's moving through a landscape. And I feel a lot of there's a lot of wisdom there, a lot of symbolism there of like how we let our grief lead us, and what, beautiful spots along the way. I mean, I've never met a river that didn't have just these incredible nooks and crannies, that have been made
mm,
from being carved out. And uh, I love, uh, yeah, the visual of what is there to find when we follow that stream.
mm. Thank you, Sequoia, for letting us in on your grief and heartbreak journey.
Mm, yeah, of course. Thanks
Such
for.
reverence for this topic and coming, like, yeah, getting close to you in this part of your path. Yeah, thank you.
Mm, thank you, Austin. It was an honor to be part of the conversation. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome.